Thank you so much for talking to me. I know where you are. It's kind of crazy right now with the storm and the power and all of that stuff. It's so crazy. 2021, please be better than this.
Yeah, absolutely. It was a historic and record-breaking. I mean, the entire state was under a freeze warning. That's the entire state. I don't think that's ever happened, or at least at the very least, I think this was like the coldest it's gotten in 70 years. So it's amazing that it
Gosh.
happened. And for us, we live in Dallas, and I'm presently in Austin, where Scott Reed is, and you spoke to him earlier. I'm in Austin shooting the Walker TV series reboot, and so my home base has been Dallas for the 31 years I've been doing this. So my wife said, "When I come down for Valentine's Day weekend," I said, "It's going to be crazy cold, so just be ready." So we spent that entire time in our RV, which was a bit of an educational thing for us, staying in an RV when the weather was so amazingly cold. But yeah, what kind of effects guy would I be if I couldn't keep our trailer nice and warm and keep us going with all the utilities and such? But we did all right. It's a little crazy. We are getting back into shooting starting tomorrow.
I'm so glad that you guys are okay and managed, especially in an RV. And luckily, with the weather change, you can go back to work and everything
Yes.
hopefully is going back to kind of a little bit normal, whatever that means nowadays, I guess.
Yeah.
That's a really good kind of segue into what I want to talk to you about today, because I've had quite a few people on the show who are actors, who are prop masters, um,
Mhm.
but special effects is something that we've never really talked about before, and you are just the person to talk to about that. So I would love to hear, of all the things you could have gotten involved in when it comes to television and film, what drew you to special effects?
Well, I'm a child of the mid 70s, early 80s. And so TV was a big deal for me. TV and movies was always a big deal. You have, and this is that's one thing I tell everybody is that whatever you do, not even effects, I'm talking about in film in general, film, any kind of entertainment, the one thing is consistent is it is inconsistent. Everybody comes in for a different reason. Everybody comes in with a different background and what have you. But the common core is hopefully it's the love for this medium. It's a love for being able to find something with this amazing imagination that writers would have, or these concepts, and then to work out the nuts and bolts of how do you make that conceivable? How do you make that something that they can film and make work? So for me, it was that. It was the love of movies. I was totally fascinated by films. I also was a bit of a scaredy cat when I was a kid. I was always a little scared, and so it was almost my own bit of I don't know, therapy to kind of overcome these things. When I get to see movies and I was scared, I mean, when I grew up, the movies that I saw when I saw or when it came on TV or that I saw in theaters when I was allowed to, I mean, really scary movies like Jaws, The Omen, The Exorcist, all these. It wasn't even all about creatures and monsters. It was just something about an idea. And when you have to have your mother or your father going, "It's okay. It's not real. This isn't real." And so it had to have that kind of, solidifying that. It's like, okay, what is making this not real? What is, if that guy got killed, he got his, not get too descriptive, but like his head got taken off. What was that? And so to learn how that was done and how it was made, it fascinated me. And then I just carried that into a career. Whenever somebody would say, "We need this to happen," okay, how would you do it? We'd sit around in production meetings or concept meetings and say, they would ask the question, how can we make this happen? Whereas nowadays you can say, the visual effects guys will do it. The CG guys, they'll make it work. And you just give us some wind or something. Back then it was all about the creativity, all about what it took to make that happen. So that to me was the biggest appeal.
That's so interesting to hear. Many of my listeners know that I am a huge fan of horror movies, and I grew up watching them. My best friend and I would stay up late watching those iconic movies like The Exorcist, Jaws, like all of that. And now with special effects, it goes even beyond that. When you talk about like horror, it's not just Jaws, it's like movies like Midsummer, where the special effects are so good that it's believable even when it's so abstract, and it really brings the idea together. And I think, along with that passion for media and for the effects themselves, there has to be a skill there, right? So what does it really take somebody? What skills does it really take them to be successful in special effects?
Everybody does it differently. And I tell people what they really need to think about when they're, if let's say they're in high school, and that's when I really wanted to start doing this, was in high school, learning to do makeup effects. And I remember old Dick Smith, who's just a legend in this business of makeup effects. He came out with a book. If you remember those books when you were kids, that you came in with your little envelope of money, you had the big books that you would sign, and you'd get this big stack of books, a few weeks later. And one of them was a how to make these Halloween horror masks that Dick Smith had made. And it was like, as a kid, it was amazing. So you could either have that desire doing makeup effects and what have you. That's what drove me into it. But as far as now that I've been in it for a while, I know what it took to get me in there, and I'll get to that story in a second, which was kind of funny, is that the skill set that you have. I tell people, bring as much as you can to the table, if you can. If you're thinking about it, what kind of skill sets you have. Science is a big one. We still, to this day, I laugh about it. When we were in high school, when you said, what am I going to use a Pythagorean theorem? What do I care about these, what's the surface area, or what's the surface area of a circle? The area of a circle. What do I care that pi r squared means that? What do I care about that? I use those theories, I use those theorems and formulas on a weekly basis. So we have to deal a lot with physics and science. So science is a big one. Staying within the sciences, geometry, physics, chemistry is a big one too, because of the pyrotechnic material that we use, chemical reactions in some cases. We have to have a pretty good working knowledge of chemistry and science. That's a big one. So science is a big one. Mathematics is another one. I would say, even though starting out as a technician, let's say you're just on the set and you're lighting fires and you're doing smoke and doing all those things, you may not think about it then, but as you get older, you think about economics, because it is a business. And that, for lack of a better term, when people say, I want to get into the movie business, I try to tell them to find another job just in case. You always have to have a fallback career. And that goes back to what I was going to tell you a little bit about when I was younger, is that economics is a big deal. Being able to invest your money, being able to know how the money that you make, and make no mistake, when you do work in this industry, even starting out as like a production assistant, to get you the experience on set, to figure out what you want to do, I tell people do that because you have a chance to experience all the departments at once, and then figure out, that looks like an interesting one, or the camera department looks fun, or grips, those guys are cool, or any of those things. You can find something you like. Even when you're doing something as a PA, the money is okay. It's actually pretty good. So, but it's not consistent. That's the big one. So economics is a big deal. And another skill set to come in, people don't realize it. We have quite a few welders, people that weld, people that do plumbing, people that are mechanics, auto mechanics, if you can believe it. I mean, you think about it, and I can go through the various examples of why. Like a welder, we have to put roll cages in cars. Like one of the questions you had, or going to have, I'm sure, is about what people don't realize, what we do as effects. For other departments, we end up doing a lot of the roll cages inside of stunt vehicles. Whenever a stunt guy goes on a ramp, or we flip and roll him over with a cannon, or any of those things, we provide the protective cage inside, just like they would NASCAR. Except in NASCAR, you're hoping you don't crash. With us, we know we're going to crash, so we put extra supports here and there to provide safety for our stunt guy. Safety is paramount. It's above everything else. Safety is the biggest. So we hire a welder, not a guy that's throwing some piece of metal together, but real welders, because you want the confidence in knowing that this car that's going to roll about 8 times with black powder or high pressure air cannon behind the guy with a fireball and all this stuff, you want to know that guy is going to do an amazing job welding. There's no question. So welders are a big one. Auto mechanics are another. We've had to do stuff to vehicles for stunt department, or just rigging in general, that a person with the ability and experience with as auto mechanics, they're priceless to have that. So if you can find people that do all of that, and then so, I know it's weird. It's like, okay, Bob, you just listed like almost every tech trade. I mean, including and up to including PE. It is a very physical department, and not just our department, but in general. You'll hear people talk about our grueling hours and what have you in these extreme locations, and you're hoofing carts that are like 120-pound carts on wheels up hills all the time. So there's definitely some physicality to what we do. So it's quite literally, say, what do you take? What trades do you need? Your skills you have. You can say, if you have at least half of that to start out, you're doing all right.
It's almost reassuring to know that so many things go into it, because then if you have, one of the many different trades that you can utilize in a position like this, you have potential to be successful. And I kind of want to reel it back a little bit to early on in your career, because just looking at your credits, which there are many, one that caught my eye was an early credit of yours, kind of right when you were starting out, being an assistant on Ace Ventura, When Nature Calls. That's like a movie that I love. I grew up watching it. And I really want to hear from your perspective. What was it like working on such an iconic set with an iconic cast so early on in your career? And as people who have seen the movie know, a lot of special effects go into that movie. So what lessons did you take away from that?
That was a lot of fun, because up till then, as a matter of fact, I was between westerns. We had done a few westerns, and we'll go back to that, or later on, it's like what my favorites are. And we did the basics for westerns, so we did arrows and smoke and fire and what have you. And then we got a call from a friend of ours out of Vancouver, that the guy that I was working for had worked with on White Fang up in Alaska, and he said he was down in Texas and San Antonio to work on Ace Ventura: When Nature Calls. It was the sequel to, of course, Ace Ventura: Pet Detective. The work that I've been doing had westerns, very basic, good stuff, fun stuff. It was, to just an example, the very first job I ever got was a commercial that shot at the studios at Las Colinas, when that's an iconic studio in Dallas. That's where all these big movies were shot, big commercials, what have you. And they had a big King Kong arm. They brought him from LA, a big mechanical arm, and it was a Texaco commercial with this Fay Ray type person in the hand, sets it down, she's screaming over Texaco. And just to see that scale, my very first anything, that was amazing. And then you get that taste where it's like, God, if that's how it is all the time, that's great. It's kind of how it was on Ace Ventura, because we had done, some big scale commercials or big scale TV shows and what have you. This was something that was big scale the whole time. So we were a part of he did a parasailing rig where Spike, the monkey, puts a hook on the back of a Jeep, and he's got a parasailing rig, and he's flying through the air behind his Jeep doing his little recon, which is not really subtle. But it was, but we did this whole huge frame that went underneath these enormous cranes with camera rigs. I mean, everything that we did was a huge scale. My first time working with an effects team that no matter what they did, they took it to that next level. It wasn't just good enough. And you'll hear me say that a lot. That was probably the first time that it really sank in, where I've said to people, there's a reason why we call it special effects. Whatever you're doing better be special. It's not average effects. It's not just good enough effects. So if you ever hear anyone on my team say, no, that's good enough, then do we take it to the next step? We never do that's good enough. And I saw that on that show. I saw a show that took everything to the nth degree. If you have something that's going to be 10,000 pounds you're lifting in the air, you make sure that whatever you're lifting it with can carry 100,000 pounds or something like that. You just take it to that next level. Plus, this was right after Jim Carrey had done, I believe he had just done Dumb and Dumber and The Mask and such. And so he was still popular at the time, but very approachable, to such a nice guy. I really enjoyed working with him. About a month into the show, I think it just has me an assistant, but I actually ran second unit on that show. So once the guy who had originally made the call to that friend of mine, he, I guess, trusted me enough. He says, yeah, we'll have you run second unit, which is a lot of stunts, a lot of the effects, not a lot of the, there's still the crew and cast and what have you to come in, but it's mostly driven by the stunts and effects. And we had such a good time. Jim Carrey was a delight. And we went from a month in San Antonio, I think a month and a half in San Antonio. The rest of it we shot in Charleston, South Carolina, which is an incredible place. And, but yeah, that was my first taste of being raised in Dallas, working with my mentor who had been doing effects since the 60s. I mean, he was the guy that he could do it with, I used to say he could do it with spit, scotch tape, string, and dreams. And that's how he made the effects work. Whatever it was always like this kind of, you don't need anything really fancy, just do this. And some of the stuff he did was unbelievable. It was an amazing, resourceful man, but he was always a bit, not minimal, but he said, this is what we need, and this is all we need. And then you work with these other folks that like, they bring in these huge trailers and this big rigging gear. And it's like, that big trailer over there is just for rigging, all the wire and cable and stuff just to work on that. And this one right here, that's how we use it. That's the one we use on set. This one's for me, its own portable machine shop. I mean, all of that. And you're back to how it was when you first got in this business, where you're just in awe of working around that. So yeah, it was a pretty amazing thing. I'd only been in the business at the time about 4 years. And so yeah, it was a nice taste for that. And once you get that taste, you're like, we should do this all the time. Or at least you can see budgetary limitations, so you can't do that. But if you have the money and you have the desire to work that way, it's great. So yeah, Ace Ventura was great. As a matter of fact, my little story about Ace, I'm sure you guys remember the scene where he comes out of the Rhino when he's doing more of his recon. Okay, that Rhino, there was a big plate on the back that was made out of latex rubber that he comes out of. Now, during that scene, the guy inside having to change out that plate that was a rubber plate with about 30 or 40 bolts in there, that was me. I was the one in there after every take. I had to stand by, and I'm not kidding when I say that there were times when we were shooting that, and it was the middle of the summertime. That was not even the least bit funny when it comes to heat. It was well over 100 plus degrees, and I crawl in there and change out the screws. I think it was 30 some odd screws, and by the time I was finished, I think it was changing like 10. It's like, okay, that's perfect, let's go. And but we would all have to watch when Jim would come out, and half of the crew had to turn their backs. We could not watch him. He was one of the funniest guys to see doing his improv right there. There was tons of shots that we did on that show. You could obviously only use one take, the one that they cut together. There were some takes on there that they didn't shoot that was just amazingly funny. When you got the crew laughing, who's used to seeing him in character the whole time, when you got the crew almost falling out laughing, it's pretty amazing. So yeah, so because of that, my office coordinator on this show that we're doing, he got a still frame of that photo of Jim Carrey coming out the back of the Rhino, and he put a quote of mine on there. It says, "Always follow your dreams, Bob Trevino," and he puts underneath that. So that's in my office now. And I thought, well, if I want to be remembered for something, then might as well be the butt plate for the Rhino on Ace Ventura.
Pretty early in your career still, like you said, only about 4 years in, and working with names like that on sets like that, it has to be amazing. And since then, I mean, your credits have like skyrocketed. There are so many. Obviously, this was quite a few years ago, so you filled up that time with a lot. And I'm sure that on most of the sets you have really memorable moments just like this. But is there a time or a specific set that you worked on, a memory that kind of tops them all, whether that's a learning experience or just pure comedy that, something hilarious happened that you'll always remember?
Yeah, there's a few of them, and most of it, it's hard to pin down one actual show. It was hard to top Ace when it comes to the experience, even after all those years. But we always try to find what I tell people is that even if it's a bad film, like bad experience, not just a bad film. Gosh, we all have to pay our bills. It's not like we all work on Academy Award or Emmy Award winning projects. Is that at the end of it, it's just a memory, and a couple of years down the road, it's a good memory. So you always find those good things in them. But I'd say as a genre, or just what has affected me the most as far as the look of it, and it makes me think, this is why I do this. I mean, this is truly why I do this. I have to catch those moments where it's not just a paycheck show, where you're doing it just to do the effects, here's some smoke, here's some this, here's some that, but is a lot of times the ones that really make me think about what it is I'm doing and makes me realize, okay, this is a good reason why I do this, are Westerns. I've done a few Westerns. And the biggest reason why is a lot of times, they're location shooting normally. I've done some work as far north as Canada, and in Texas, over in the West Texas area, out near Lajitas and Terlingua, in that area near Big Bend National Park, which is amazing. And you get up in the morning, and these amazing sunrises over the desert, and this whole crew is working together, and it's almost like you're going camping, like or it's like a summer camp kind of thing. Everybody kind of has that feel. They all pull together, and then you have the wranglers and the horses and everything else. And we as effects guys can do everything from, flying arrows, or we can do campfires, or rain, or dust, or any of the normal stuff, the shootout, stuff like that. And so it's very basic as an effects thing goes, other than the occasional large scale stuff. But you get these amazing actors that what they have to work with is their script and this amazing backdrop and their acting ability out in these westerns. And to me, that every time I'd see like some of these shots, and we at the end of the day, if we're working on another show, whether it's something that has nothing to do with Western, but it's like downtown where getting dirty and nasty and explosions and what have you, all that fun stuff where you walk away going, that was a fun day. There's a lot of times during Westerns that you think that was an amazing day for that. And I worked on anything from serious Westerns to kind of silly Westerns. One of my favorites was Shanghai Noon. I ran the set on Shanghai Noon with Jackie and Owen and everybody else that was there. And Tom was a great director on that show. But Jackie was an amazing person. And, and Owen being a fellow Dallasite, we talked about Dallas every once in a while. Although I couldn't get past the wow thing, because he did that a lot. I mean, that was like, that's not just wow. And he would improv a bit, and Jackie was still kind of phonetic with his English. He really wasn't that great with it, which to throw him off. So it was really funny chemistry. I'm glad they took it into sequels and did quite well with it. But that was a Western in the middle of these amazing locations. But then you couple in, there's great locations, there's great stuff. And then you couple in Jackie Chan. And it's amazing rigging and stunt stuff. And trust me when I tell you, I'm a behind the scenes guy. I'm going to tell you, he does do all his own stunts without question. The guy is amazing. And so that was great. So as a Western, that was fantastic. Or you get to the serious side, where I worked on, they brought me in to do all the bullet hits for this end shootout sequence on a movie called Open Range. That was incredible. That was, it's been a long time since I've worked on a show that had such grittiness, other than the old Larry McMurtry ones that we did, were so gritty and so raw, but such amazing acting. But as far as fun is concerned, truly fun, superhero movies are fantastic. I absolutely love those. We did a TV series for Marvel called The Gifted, and we shot that in Atlanta. And as for us as effects department, it was episodic. That was one. So it was literally, on any episodic show, is always a challenge. What can you get us in a few hours? What can you make in a couple of days? Whereas if it's a movie, if I tell the guys, by the way, we've got to build this big rig, this car flips, turns, rolls over, does whatever, and it's catches on fire and explodes. When does this play? About 3 or 4 weeks. They almost cry because they're thinking, we have that much time? So they can really polish it nicely. Whereas on a TV show, they're like, this shoots next week. And so they have to just kind of throw all this together. But this superhero show that we did was amazing because it always kept us busy. Some of my best demo reel gag pieces, like were all put together, like how we throw stuff, or an explosions, or flipping cars, or any mechanical bits. I think the Gifted has given me so much material to be able to show people, I've made this before. Look, I got a gun that throws knives, and I got this, and we floated that in the air. Look at this car flipping in the air. So from a kid standpoint, going back to the amazement that I had when I was a kid for favorite shows, superheroes are great ones. And we just finished one for Netflix with Robert Rodriguez called We Can Be Heroes. And that one did really well. A great kids superhero show. So you got great superhero fun, but with kids. So there's a little lightness to it all. It wasn't always so heavy. The Gifted was great, but there was always, somebody dying or something very serious, and a lot of drama behind it. Whereas these other shows, the other superhero show for us, which was fun, it was also just a bit more lighthearted and just, it was kid friendly. So we really enjoyed that.
Well, first of all, I grew up watching Shanghai Noon, so I would imagine that is an amazing set to work on. But I don't think the average person, when watching a film, like when watching something on television or in film, they don't realize that dust, dirt, all of that, those things that you're saying are special effects. And that leads me perfectly into my next question, which is, what are those things? What are those secrets, or, different things that we might see in film or television that are special effects?
Oh yeah, the older gentleman I spoke to before, his name is Jack Bennett, by the way. He passed away a number of years ago, and he had told me a long time ago when I first met him. It was the summer of '90, I believe. He had said that the best special effect is something that no one notices. He says and he went through the examples that I'll give you as well, that you don't realize that that's an effect. And that's the beauty of it. It's just, you're just assuming that's, okay, that's what happens. And besides the dust, yeah, if there's flowing dust in the air, there's that. If there's any sort of, if there's rain, you know, very little time, very few times does Mother Nature provide. Rain is beautiful, but there's also, real rain doesn't photograph as well as when we do it, because we do bigger drops and they light it a certain way. And it's of course controllable. How much rain do you want? And a little less, turn it off, turn it on, turn it, whatever, move it over there. Rain is another one. Wet downs. We do at night, any nighttime scene out in the streets, at night, you'll notice the roads are wet. And it's like, you know, it didn't rain. We didn't have any shots before the rain. It wasn't rain, but you see a lot of scenes and shows where the road is wet for some reason at night. And the reason why, it just photographs beautifully. The street lights reflect off of the asphalt and such, or any of the other lights reflect better. The other thing that we do is, anytime there's an elevator door when it's not a real elevator, in other words, they build a set, it's an elevator door. Guess what? We operate them. I mean, like, they've been doing it for years in Star Trek. But we do that anytime there's an elevator. So we have the construction department hang the elevator doors to where they slide, and then we mechanize it. And then usually there's an effects guy back there sliding it open and closed. Elevators are one. If there's an operational sink, now I know this is weird, it's kind of boring. Operational sink on set, if there's a real set and there's a kitchen sink or a bathroom sink, or even a shower, and this is a set that they built, we plumb it. We run it. We make sure there's hot water there, there's cold water, everything is sealed up and runs properly so that we can, you know, make it function normally. That's something that not very glamorous, but also when you're talking about trades, plumbing is a big one too, for the rain and for those type of sequences. That ends up becoming something that is, I don't say bread and butter, but it's just a given. Whenever they talk about a bathroom or they talk about an elevator or something, it says, is that a real set? No, it's going to be a bill. Okay, then we know what we're going to do.
A lot of people, maybe people that want to get into the industry or that think special effects are really cool and want to make a career out of it, like you, when you were younger, they have that idea in their mind, oh, I want to make a monster, or I want to make, you know, some creature or something like that. But there are also the people who just want to be on set and really help things kind of just flow the right way. And special effects does manage a lot of that, which, you know, many people don't realize, especially people who aren't in the industry or haven't done research on the industry. And as a viewer, you know, we kind of take for granted what we're watching, because we see a bathroom scene and we don't realize how many people are behind the scenes. Special effects is a part of the set that many people don't research or know so much about, and what their purpose, how deep their purpose runs in kind of making something come to life. It's more than just those monsters. It's even down to those nitty gritty, maybe less exciting plumbing moments, you know what I mean? And it's great to hear that you can have so many skills and still be successful. And along with all of the amazing skills that you've listed and different things you've kind of shared about your experiences, is there anything you can tell my listeners, if I have people who are interested in getting into the industry or specifically interested in special effects with so many years under your belt, what have you learned that you could share with them as far as advice?
Be patient, for one, because a lot of times when you are just at the starting gate, you're just ready to go, ready to go, ready to go. Where's accepted? Where's accepted? It can be a bit boring. I tell people that our business, not just my department, our business is almost like being a fireman or an ER, you know, a nurse or something. There are times when there's nothing going on, and then suddenly your name is called, your department is called, or your scene is up, and you've got to be frosty and ready to go right then and there, 100%. But there's a lot of time where it's sitting and waiting. I think it was Michael Caine that said, they don't pay me to act. I'd act for free. What they pay me to do is wait, and they don't pay me enough. And that's kind of what we do. We do a lot of waiting, a lot of standing around. And some of the times is how you use that time effectively, getting stuff ready, get everything polished. And when I've hired people that have been, remember I described PAs on set, and they're on set the whole time. And then they say, hey, I want to do effects. And we've brought some people in early on just to give it a try. And a lot of times they would see just my guys on set. and they would see them waiting, telling stories, joking, whatever. And then when it comes time, bam, you push a button, ready to go. But they don't see what's involved with the pushing of that button, or the fact that they brought up this widget or this box of stuff that came from the shop. The guys have been spending weeks or months on testing and finalizing and everything else and bring it out there. So I tell people that there's a lot more to it than what they see and notice. So that's where the patience comes in, where a lot of times people are just ready to go, period. They're done. They are so ready for this and they're done and ready to go. It's like, well, there's a lot of that time you have to put in. That's the one thing I remember is, I don't want to say you always have to sweep the floors, but it's not above that. I still sweep the floors here at the shop just because. And it's not like I get back to my nitty gritty, but it just has to happen. So it's none of that is beneath any of us. So I say that be patient, be humble is a big one too. Humility, there's a certain point where, I truly believe this is all kind of ideal. It's not just about movies, is that, no one can get off their high horse gracefully. And that humility is something that you really have to learn early on, so that you can be successful. Because nothing worse than complacency. There's nothing worse than you not paying attention to any limitations you may have. And I still, 31 years doing this, I'm still learning stuff from the most, I don't want to say odd, but just unexpected locations and unexpected people. You learn some great stuff. So be open with that learning and be humble. Now, as far as effects is concerned, and this could be any department too, be on time or actually be early. There's that old joke where they say, if you're on time, you're late. If you're early, you're on time. If you're late, you're fired. That's kind of, we hear that a lot. And I hear people say, oh, you don't have to do that. It's like, no, sometimes you could see that. This goes back to these special effects. Whatever you're doing, go above and beyond. So you have to realize that what you're doing has to maintain the ideal that what you're doing is something special. You keep that in mind. Don't just do you remember I told you, if I hear somebody saying that's good enough, then when you have the great examples that Kevin Costner, we did a movie with him called Mr. Brooks. Fantastic show. Love that guy to death. Well, he was amazing to watch as an actor. It was great working with him open range as a director, but even as an actor is even better. Is that we did a scene, and it was a rather bloody scene where somebody gets their throat sliced and what have you. It was pretty nasty. But after the shot was over, Kevin Costner had come up to us because it was a scene where he had a shovel and hits Dane Cook in the throat. It's pretty nasty. And he says, I've been in this business a while. And he goes, and I've seen stuff before where I'd say, I see the effect. I just don't see anything special about it. He goes, that looks special. And so when you get that kind of feedback, you realize, okay, those ideals, even though they seem like something that you would picture as an inspirational poster on my back wall somewhere, this is real. So when I tell people if they want to do effects, maintain that ideal that what you're doing is special. Be on time, be patient, be humble, be thankful for it too. I'm still thankful that I work in an industry that they actually feed us. They feed us. It's great. We get catered food and they pay us money to do this stuff that I would, where I would love to say, like Michael Caine, that I do this for free, but I still have to pay bills. Is that there's that, but I would say the other thing too, let's get very specific about this, about effects and stuff. I tell people to don't specialize. I've had people come up to me before and they do effects as well. And they say, hey, I hear you're in town. We'd love to work with you. Okay, great. I could use you in the shop. Are you okay with welding? No, I don't weld. I just do smoke. And I would say, you just do smoke? That's all you do? Well, yeah, I just do smoke. I'm on set. I do smoke. It's like, well, you won't be that much of an asset to us. So I tell people to don't specialize. Bring as many skills as you can to the table. Welding or you might talk about welding science and stuff like that. Get as many licenses as you can. If somebody says, I took some college courses on welding, is that okay? Heck yeah, do that. Get that experience so that when you make that approach to somebody, and this is going to come full circle with my discussion about my early experience in this career, is that you come to somebody with a table with that. You say, I'm a welder. And by the way, I went to college and I have, when I was in college, I got a degree in science or in chemistry, or I'm a chemist, or I'm a mold maker. Any of those things. I used to do makeup effects at Halloween stores or Halloween at haunted houses and stuff. All those are big pluses. Now, here's the reason why I say this. I speak from experience. Before I got in this business, in high school, like I said, always a science geek. I remember my science fair project for my senior year was I built an artificial hand for, I have a degree in electronic engineering. I've been doing electronics since I was very young. I designed my first circuit board when I was like 13 years old. And so it was something that I just was comfortable with because it was math and science. It was, it's what I did. And so I built this artificial hand, but I built it out of a bunch of different components that was based on an x-ray of my own hand. And so after I built this, I mean, this was everything I do already. Mechanics, makeup effects. I took a mold of my hand. I made a rubber skin, the electronics I do, and all of that. And then I realized that you can make a career out of this. People actually make money doing this. And so not having the internet or somebody like you, which is a great resource, ask the questions, get the answers. I just read up on stuff. And there was a movie that came out, and I still give credit to this one. There's a movie called FX, the letters FX. It had, oh my gosh, I can't believe I'm forgetting the names. Anyway, it was a great show about this guy in New York City who was an effects guy. And it was a complete fantasy piece by way of what he does. Here was a guy out of New York City working out of like a box truck thing, something special effects, and he did everything. He did makeup effects, he did bullet hits, he did mechanical effects, did electronics, did all of that. And so I saw this movie and I was like, that's what I want to do. That's it. That's the guy. And so I modeled these disciplines after that. It's like, I got to learn how to do mechanical effects. I got to work more of this. I got to learn to do makeup effects. I got to start honing my electronics a bit more. And so I started working at that. So it was the summer when I was getting my degree in electronic engineering, and I was still doing off stuff with makeup effects and what have you. So by the time I went to Dallas, to move to Dallas, to at first furthering my education in electronics, and then kind of happening into the film industry with a friend of mine who was an actor, who took him to his auditions, because usually if you have an actor as a friend, usually they're ride. And so I took him for an audition, and then made some phone calls while I was there in the lobby while he was doing his audition, and found out there's actual effects people. When I met the older gentleman I'd say about that, the mentor, Jack Bennett, and I showed him a bunch of pictures of stuff that I'd done, he said, you don't just do this, you don't just do that. And he actually told me I was overqualified. I mean, not like he wasn't going to hire me. He says, we have people that just specialize in just rigging, or just specialize in makeup effects, or just specialize in the mechanical, or just specialize in this. He goes, you've got this. And I base it on that movie where the character of an effects, nobody does that. Nobody does all of that. That's like all lumped together in one. But because I didn't know any better, that's what I did. So it inadvertently taught me that if you come into the industry being overqualified, you're actually at a better chance of doing well. And also diversifying too. This is something too that's very important for anybody who's thinking about doing effects. You don't always need effects. I'm talking about productions. Not every show that comes out, whether it's a drama or a soap opera or even a thriller or some sort, well, a thriller maybe, but doesn't always need special effects. They always need props, grips, rigging, camera, sound, all of those other departments. So I tell people to diversify too. So if you put all of your eggs into a career basket, effects may not be that one for you. You got to make sure that you can say, oh, I'm a mold maker too. Oh, great. The props guys will hire you to build all this stuff. Or I'm also a welder. Perfect. Construction can hire you to build this stuff. You're a good carpenter, a plumber, whatever. So I say that, don't go in with it. I'm just going to be an effects guy. That's it. Because I've done stunt work before. I've done, prop building before. I've done a bit of stuff before. So diversify.
I think that's really good advice just for anybody who wants to get into the industry, or really any career. Stay humble and don't put all your eggs in one basket, because the average person switches careers how many times, in their life, unless they really know that that's the one thing that they want to do. And that's rare. But besides the joy of working, and obviously now the storm hopefully leaving for good, is there anything else positive going on in the industry, in the workplace, or in your personal life that you can share with listeners?
Oh, absolutely. During the pandemic, during the quarantine in March, we shut down. We were working on a series that's not out yet for Amazon called Panic. And it's ironic, we shut down on that show, and everybody went into quarantine. I was really lucky that I've got a nice piece of property in Dallas, and we could stay quarantined, and that was helpful. But I knew that during the course of a few months into it, that people were going to be really hungry for content. There's that joke, that meme says, "I finished Netflix," and it's almost true. I mean, they were really hurting for content, and a lot of my guys that work with me, not to say they were all, negative about it, what are we going to do, but it was the source of hope that we are going to get back. And when we do get back, once we follow, procedures, which for me, in my opinion, we have a ton of safety procedures that we follow, just being an effects department. I said, and I told the guys, and they knew it. It's not like I'm enlightening them in any way. Is that it's just another procedure that we have to follow to make things safe on set. But I did say that once we are able to get to set, there's going to be more work than there is people, and it can be a little bit of a conflict to where, I mean, I'm turning down quite a bit of work, and I can't say who some of them were with, but there was I have turned down a lot of work. And so I told the guys who were worried about, are we ever going to get back to work? Are we ever going to get back to how it was? And say, I don't think we're ever going to get back to how it was exactly, but we're going to actually get back to work. And once it's realized that we can do it and do it well, and we finished that TV series Panic, we had one last episode for the season, and we did an amazing job of that one. We had some great, I mean, I've got nothing but faith and admiration for my Texas crews out here, my Texas film crews and TV show crews, is that we did an amazing job. Once that happened, other shows would follow suit, and they're still going like crazy in Atlanta right now, is that, the calls are going to come in. So we have had more of a choice, more of an option, more of a, not just, God, I hope there's work, just as this industry will give you, but what job do I want to do?
Maintaining like a positive light on the industry, people who watch it and might not be involved in it, really appreciating the content that they've gotten during this time is a big thing, because not only as somebody who's in entertainment, like yourself pointing out that it's a form of escapism, I think the average person is starting to kind of understand that more. How do we relax nowadays? It's turning on a show we really like, or,
Mm-hmm.
watching a movie that we loved growing up that kind of comforts us, and escaping into a time that was easier on us mentally, physically and emotionally. So I think all of those are great points, and everything that you've shared has been so amazing, especially to listeners of mine that might want to break into the industry and don't know really where they fit. I think this was helpful for them so that they can see that you don't have to know. There's not one right answer right now.
That's
You
right.
can figure it out. I would love for you to tell listeners where they can find you and your work.
I believe I've got, I'm sorry, you have to forgive me. I'm not a TikTok celebrity like Scott Reeder is. He's trying his best to get me on there. And I will eventually. I am on Instagram, Bits and Pieces Effects. And I believe I've still got Bits and Pieces Effects on Twitter. I have to kind of limit that, as you're aware, when you have signed the non-disclosure agreements, the NDAs, we have to kind of, we can't really send anything out until after the show's over, or whether it's stuff that we have permission to show. So I end up posting a lot more stuff about kind of nondescript behind the scenes things.
And I will link your IMDb as well for viewers that want to kind of see all of the credits that you have, because
Oh,
I've
sure.
listed them prior to our interview, but there are so many that I didn't even list. I mean, it goes
It's,
on and on. So seriously,
yeah,
especially for
I'm
listeners who are in your area, I cannot wait for everybody to hear this and to get some great information from you, because you're clearly a legend in the industry as far as
oh
special
God,
effects
please.
go. Thank you so much for your time today and
Very
making it
welcome.
work, especially with everything going on. I truly appreciate it.
Absolutely. I appreciate the exposure. I appreciate the information you're passing out to folks. It's always a good thing. Like I said, information is for the most part free and priceless. So absolutely.